We all understand risk. It can be eliminated, controlled, mitigated, not considered or seen. General business risk is a necessary evil if work is going to be performed. Community risk is a necessary evil if members need to leave their homes and workplaces by walking or riding or driving, by standing. You accept the risk of falling. All of us undertake the same level of risk and understanding it, and we do so we can continue on with our lives. Safety complacency, though, is one of those risks that does not need to be a necessary evil. The trick is, how do we diffuse safety complacency like a pro, wherever that may be, Antarctica, mainland United States, or on the global stage? And what are the powerful strategies to ignite your safety program towards exceptional performance? We're about to explore the answers to these questions and more. I know we all have a lot to do today and this week. Never mind what's left undone yesterday. The urge is almost unbearable to multitask during the sound of my voice. But I ask you to dedicate this time to yourself. This is a good time to be a little bit selfish and capture as much information as you can, because our near future will soon become a distant past, and opportunities captured have a higher likelihood of conversion. This webinar will fly by, that I promise. So here we are in the present, talking about the future, as brief as our few minutes together today may be, and considering actions that we can take proactively to arrive at solutions to an age-old challenge. How can we diffuse complacency in our workplaces and in our communities in such a way as to positively impact the organization's safety culture? What we're about to discover is how you can ensure safer workplaces and communities and empower a new era of change agent for safety through the power of realization, strategy, and by design. The term complacency is the subject of many papers and studies. Most of them reference back to the psychological phenomena that causes it. If you look at dictionary.com, it refers to the term as a feeling intertwined with an unawareness of hazard, a self-satisfaction with an existing solution, condition, or the like. From a safety practitioner's point of view, I challenge that definition. If we accept the definition of complacency as stated, then the solution to diffuse it within the workplace or anywhere else is almost impossible to achieve, because any process that depends on feelings for success is destined for failure. This outcome is inevitable. Human feelings can change by the second, impacting our decision-making process. This makes the concept of human feelings generally unpredictable. Any process parameter that is unpredictable introduces unreliability in the overall process outcome. And then unreliability then causes a higher likelihood that the outcome of any process will vary and may not be the desired or the predicted one. I prefer to think complacency as an output of a leadership process, as a result, as a decision that is reached based on a choice. And choices also drive result variability and process performance. Variability then drives unpredictability, which proliferates undesired outcomes such as near misses, injuries, and significant events. By redefining complacency, you can begin to establish an entirely new paradigm by design. You can begin to see it in a different light. Now, instead of fixing feelings, you are correcting processes to maximize the likelihood of your desired business outcome or community outcome. Looking at this statistically, you are minimizing the variability of the results and increasing the predictability of your process. This is leadership in a nutshell. So how does complacency rise within an organization? What is the fertilizer, the energy that keeps the employee appetite for risky behavior alive? Well, later on in this webinar, I'll be discussing human risk assessment process in more detail, which helps explain how complacency rises within organizations and the community. For now, let's just say that complacency is a direct output, a result of a process leadership that leadership has in place, and a process that can be changed at any time for any reason and by anyone. Complacency rises within organizations because that is the way the process was designed to be. Even one complacent employee within your organization can cause significant inflection point in your organization's ability to exceed customer requirements in terms of lost productivity, bottom line detractors, injuries, illnesses, and ultimately fatalities. Complacent employees translate to complacent community members. In my view, there is a direct link between risk-taking at work and risk-taking in the community. Is complacency a good thing? Yes, it can be. We can actually count on it. Imagine if we had to inspect our vehicle's brakes every time we took it out for a drive. I mean, if we had to remove the tires and measure the brake pad thickness every time, for most of us, that would be every day since we rely on our vehicles as a primary means of transportation. We would go insane. It is simply not practical to do so. If we had to check our smartphone battery every second to make sure it was charged, we would go insane. We must be complacent in this regard. We must believe that the next second will be just like the one that just passed. I'm sure you can come up with a gazillion examples without much thought. Complacency does not establish, or does establish, a strong baseline so that we can move on with our lives. We place our vehicles on a maintenance schedule and assume that everything will be okay in between maintenance cycles, including our brakes. Check. We are complacent that our local automotive service center will take care of our car in a way that does not place us in harm's way. After all, we paid them a fair price. Check. We are complacent that the mechanic certificates posted on the wall of our local automotive service center are real, not fraudulent, and that the organizations certifying them are certified themselves to issue those credentials. Check. We are complacent that the elevator we're on is maintained and that it works and that it will not fail. Check. Most of the time, these are good assumptions. And being complacent in this regard is the right thing to do to retain some level of sanity. We cannot check everything, every time, and for no reason. We have to move forward at some point. So complacency has its benefits and its purpose in our daily lives. On the other hand, is complacency a bad thing? Yes, it can be. Why is that? Because complacency is often based on assumptions, and some assumptions are often not correct since they are based on a single point of view. More on the topic of point of view a little bit later as we go through this webinar. We assume safety and security. Therefore, we make a choice based on that assumption. Sometimes we pay the price to find out that reality. Sometimes employees and community members and their families will pay the price as well. If your identity has ever been stolen, then you're likely not to take precautions of someone who has had their identity stolen. I call this the enactment based on experience. I know this firsthand because my identity was stolen on several occasions. I never took precautions because my assumption was that of safety and security. Nothing has ever happened. It only happens to other people. Up until that point, I unknowingly took a risk that was not worth taking. You tend to make the assumption that everything is okay, that no further action is required, and that the process you have in place to protect your identity is adequate. You become complacent until the financial reality of your decision unfortunately hits home. Complacency causes predestined blindness. I call these safety blind spots. Predestined because the result is predictable to those that are not complacent and are prepared for a successful outcome. Complacency can be an easy gateway for bad things to happen. It becomes the path of least resistance. Less work is required to be complacent than not. It is a highly attractive option, therefore becomes the most contagious, spreading like a wind-fed wildfire across your organization. Oftentimes doing so incrementally that you don't even notice it. Is complacency an ugly thing? Yes, it can be. Complacent organizations and communities risk livelihoods and lives and the business itself. They are blind to the real hazards and the resulting consequences of those hazards, both financial and reputational. Complacency is incremental and does not care about organizational structure or financial performance or market position or size of the community. Remember, complacency is an output of a process that is working exactly as it was designed. Once this output is realized, it is resilient and resistant to change unless the process that created it is purposefully and deliberately modified by leadership at all levels. Among major factors influencing workplace and community safety are human behavior and formalized processes. We will set workplace conditions aside for this discussion as a factor influencing safety because they are also the result of the leadership process. Realistically, both human behavior and workplace processes are a true reflection of leadership effectiveness. Focusing on these two factors is the key to implementing a sustainable and effective safety management system. Focusing on workplace processes or process improvement, it really inherently positively affects employee behavior in ways conducive to overall system performance predictability. Human behavior, in fact, is the result of a risk assessment. That is to say, we all behave the way we do because we have evaluated the pros and cons of the alternatives and decided on an action forward based on risk. The consequences of actions drive each of our behaviors. If we perceive the risk is low, then we are likely to take that action. Conversely, if we perceive the risk to be high, then we are likely not to take that action. For example, if I perceive that I will lose my life today by electing not to lock out that hazardous energy, then the probability is high that if I value my life and family, I will make the right decision, that I will hold myself accountable for taking the right actions to assure my safety. On the other hand, if I perceive that my well-being is assured by not locking out that hazardous energy, after all, nothing's ever happened in the past, the probability is high that I will make the wrong choice simply because I want to be home a little earlier to attend my children's soccer game. Wrong choice in the sense that the outcome of my options may not be what I predicted, what I assumed. There are many examples I can give. When someone is texting and driving while driving, they are making a risk assessment. They are saying basically, I don't believe nothing can happen, and the likelihood of something happening is really low, and the impact that it's going to be really low. So this text is actually worth my time, worth taking that risk right now as I'm driving down the road. It's worth doing. That is behavior. That is a risk assessment. In these instances, a risk assessment or my risk assessment determines my behavior based on my personal view of the potential consequences of the planned outcome. Very often helping the individual or organization early during this personal risk assessment is the difference between who gets to go home after work and who never return home to their loved ones. So how do we make unsafe choices? Notice I did not say the term why in this question. How questions lead to process changes. Why questions lead to blame, shame, and train actions. Employees make unsafe choices because they are offered several of them to choose from by their leaders. Employees make a risk assessment and then draw a conclusion based on a point of view. That is to say that their point of view, their perception, has a significant impact on how and why they draw conclusions. A point of view is susceptible to the incredible power of influence. If you view things, or how you view things can be swayed by others. And we know this. We have experienced it. Think of the people that have had an influence in your life, those that have changed the course, or those that have broadened your horizons. These people are influencers, often not really knowing or understanding that they have a significant impact in your life, both personal and professional. The same is very true within organizations. There are formal and informal influencers that affect how other employees view themselves, their job, their worth to the organization, both positively and negatively. Influence is an outcome. It really is the result of an event or series of events that encourage it. Most of us need to be convinced through a sequence of witness actions before we allow or permit others the privilege of influencing us. A supportive boss arrives to work before everyone else does and leaves after everyone else does. That predictable action has a certain influence on employees that shapes their point of view. Unwavering commitment to them and to the company really do come in mind. A self-centered boss that often treats employees with varying levels of disrespect. This undesirable action has a certain influence on employees that shapes their point of view as well. Questionable commitment and ulterior motives come to mind. In either case, leadership has influenced the workforce through its actions. Leadership in action is about encouraging the desired performance by recognizing that leaders are part of the process that creates every workplace outcome, including complacency. Employees make behavioral decisions that are based on how they see the world at the time and on the conscious and unconscious biases they have. There is no doubt that supervisors create and promote the working environment, and this creation and promotion influences employees to behave in ways that are conducive to their environment. The work environment is a process that is designed and owned and operated by leadership. So if complacency sets in, it is obviously leadership's responsibility to diffuse it. A little later, I'll be discussing the topic of consequential leadership and accountability. Accountability is one of those concepts that everyone knows, but few actually recognize. It is evasive, hard to capture, yet easy to spot, like a shadow in the bright sunlight. It is a true riddle for most underperforming organizations. Accountability can be extremely external or actually self-imposed. We know that organizations that do not have it fail, and those that have too much of it also fail. In one case, no one's responsible for everything. In the other case, everyone's held accountable. In both cases, too little or too much is not a good thing. I've seen cases where the line supervisor valued and focused on personal relationships with each of its employees over the responsibilities of his employer. This led to complacency, productivity loss, miscommitments, non-compliance with the company safety requirements. After a closer look, we found employees showing up late for work and leaving early. We found them on frequent breaks and not wearing proper personal protective equipment to perform their jobs. The workplace became a compensated social club, where a place where you earned a living without the benefit of essential productivity. In the end, this leadership process led to injuries and a customer that was not enamored with the organization's performance, including quality of services, financial, schedule compliance, and production. The issue here was lack of accountability and a haven for complacency. In another case, the line supervisor valued and focused much more on his responsibilities to his employer over the personal relationship of his employees. The line supervisor was quick on the attack in the blame game. Meet the schedule, meet the schedule, meet the schedule. Lower cost, lower cost, lower cost, higher quality, higher quality, higher quality. Chop, chop. This then led to a high rate of disciplinary actions and high turnover rates, which steered towards productivity losses, miscommitments, and ultimately non-compliance with the company's safety requirements. The non-compliance with safety requirements occurred because the new employees consistently rotating through the door were not properly trained to perform their jobs, and yet they were held to the same high standards. In the end, this also led to injuries and a customer that was not enamored with the organization's performance. So, too far left, too far right on this gauge is far from an ideal approach. The key is to find a balance which promotes openness, assumption of responsibilities, and the prevention of a complacent culture. More on the topic of accountability a little bit later. Managing how you view complacency while making an effort to understand how employees do what they do is the biggest obstacle in influencing their decision-making process. Keep a tight check on perceptions, biases, leader influences by considering the work environment and outcome of a process designed by leadership. We're going to reflect on several more powerful strategies to help diffuse complacency, but first let's briefly discuss incremental rationalization's role in facilitating a complacent culture, as I call it complacency's BFF, the best friend forever. We all know this term, incremental rationalization. We live it, experience it, count on it. We travel 55 miles per hour one day, then 60, then 65, then 70, then 75, then 80 on subsequent days because nothing has ever happened. Then 95 on a road with a posted speed limit of 55 miles an hour. I'll just read and answer this one text while driving. I'll run through that yellow light. I'll save 30 seconds of time. I'll have one drink before getting behind the wheel, then another, then another. Up to that point, nothing has ever happened. So one action justifies the next until one day something really bad does happen. The last justification and all others were flawed by the first one. This is incremental rationalization. The issue comes in when it is not placed in check once in a while to make sure that one risky action does not justify another. Incremental rationalization can create a culture that feeds on complacency. This occurs when one unsafe action allowed today builds on a larger action tomorrow and an even bigger one the following day. Complacency begins to offer a false sense of security. We justify it to ourselves. It's okay. It's okay not to use arc flash protection. This will only take a few minutes and nothing's ever happened in the past. I could save 10 minutes of time. Before you know it, you have employees taking major unnecessary risks because nothing has ever happened in the past and their actions were never corrected by leadership. Incremental rationalization creates risk blind spots by design, and it is complacency's best friend forever. So let's get to business and dive into the additional strategies that are effective at keeping complacency at bay within your organization. I have listed them here for you in order of presentation, and I will discuss them in detail. These strategies work. They are field proven on small programs and billion-dollar programs at national and global levels. Apply these to your chances of keeping complacency at bay and increasing your chance or increasing the point of certainty for sure. So I'll go over each one of these. Before I do, let's see, do we have any questions that have come up? Let's see. Nope. Okay. All right. So I have alluded to the first and most powerful fundamental strategy throughout this webinar, redefining complacency as an outcome, the result of a process. In this way, you focus your organization on process improvement, vice employee improvement, which offers a higher level of performance predictability. Assist your leadership in understanding and acknowledging their role in process outcomes. After all, it's a leadership process that generates business outcomes. Focus on process modification. Its byproduct is inherently organizational behavior modification. Okay, let's see. Am I advancing these slides? All right, there we go. All right, anything that generates an undesired outcome. Well, let me start this way. So anything that generates undesired outcomes in a work process is a business risk. And business risk must be mitigated, or they will impact the financial outlook of the organization sooner rather than later. Consider complacency as you would any other risk that threatens your bottom line. Often, the fundamental reason complacency thrives within organizations is that it is not viewed as a business risk. It is viewed as something that employees need to fix, as something other than what it is, an undesired outcome of a leadership process. To change this, help your leadership undertake a purposeful action to address complacency as a true and formidable business risk. Place it in the same ballpark as not having enough resources to enamor your client or your customer. By encouraging employees to recommend changes to their work processes, you're encouraging an innovative culture, one that lives to be better every day and starts the organization engine towards progress. Employee engagement is the key to diffusing complacency. Innovative cultures are inherently not complacent. They are the heartbeat to an organization's ability to operate effectively and efficiently. What is rewarded is often repeated. Employees are very observant. Use this to your advantage. Reward change and active participation in driving innovation at every possible opportunity. Make it an organizational priority. Let's dig a little deeper into how to establish impactful employee engagement. Every study performed by reputable global organizations agrees. Employee engagement is critical to an organization's success. When it is realized by choice and by design, employees will make it personal. Making it personal drives better, safer decision-making, which minimizes undesired choices and resulting outcomes. Purposefully design in the significant ways employees can be engaged. Count the ways, track the ways, measure the ways. Employees will in turn reward you with an improved safety management system. The Harvard Business Review references a Gallup report. It's called The State of the American Manager. You can Google it, which offers an in-depth look at what categorizes great managers and examines the crucial links between talent, engagement, and vital business outcomes such as profitability and productivity. To Google this, just enter Gallup Report State of the American Manager. Gallup Report State of the American Manager. The research shows that managers account for as much as 70% of the variance in employee engagement scores. It also shows that most managers are not creating environments in which employees feel motivated or even comfortable at their jobs. That the organizations need to understand what managers are doing in the workplace to create or destroy engagement. So based on this data, the Harvard Business Review report that if employees feel their managers are invested in them at the personal level, they will be more engaged. Employees do not want to be treated as a number or just as another resource to get the job done. Managers who allow their employees to experiment, to challenge the status quo, and to share information achieve higher employee engagement scores. Managers who convey, explain, and share expectations frequently are rewarded with employees who are more productive, more profitable, more creative. The pyramid, this particular pyramid of employee engagement tool, and you'll have this as part of your slide, is a great tool to help you gauge how well your organization is encouraging employee engagement and what areas to focus on if employee engagement is not at the optimal level. It starts with personal involvement from leadership. This means raising the hand and actively participating in initiatives. It means being there, being visible. Leverage the power of common causes to achieve uncommon results. This means looking for ways employees can collaborate and work on projects or initiatives together to achieve the same goal. Common causes are a tool leadership can use to bring the organization together and overpower complacency. Next, empower employees. Give them a say and a voice. Allow them to make mistakes and learn from them. Communicate that vision. Make employees part of it. Encapsulate them in the organizational goals. Employees who know where leadership is going are more apt to help them get there. Throw in a healthy dose of respect. Demonstrate it at every opportunity. Employees who feel respected for whatever they do are empowered to do the same with less. Mix in purpose. Where there's meaning, there is powerful intent. When employees feel their work has meaning, they are motivated to perform beyond expectations. And finally, you look at the employee engagement is a leadership responsibility because it too is a result of a leadership process. This tool is powerful. Use it to identify your gaps. Use it to inspire your team. Initiate an awareness campaign that focuses on making change a new norm, not just on improving safety. Complacency affects everything, not just worker and operational safety and community safety. This was tied closely with innovation, where the mindset of the way things were done yesterday is eradicated by design. Limit employee choices by implementing processes. They rely on structured approaches for work completion, not feelings or resulting behavior. There is an if-then proposition. For example, if you cannot get the keys to work on the truck before signing out the gas detection meter, then you cannot forget the gas detection meter for that job at the remote site. Then you do not have a reason or a bad choice to enter that confined space without testing the air for life-threatening exposure. By limiting these types of employee choices through the process, you limit complacency. The topic of consequential leadership can be a webinar by itself. Holding people accountable for their performance and organizational expectations is the key to driving results. Too much consequential leadership imposes fear within the organization. We've all seen it. Too little empowers complacency, which we've all seen as well. The key is to apply the right amount at the right time. This is what a leader does. Consequential leadership is an if-then proposition. For instance, if something's not working, including complacent employees, the best approach to take is to look at the leadership process that created it. Incremental rationalization is complacency's best friend forever. One rationalization leads to another, which eventually leads to something really major. And the issue of it was the first rationalization that happened. So be careful of incremental rationalization. Consider complacency as another business risk. It is no different than financial performance, schedule performance, quality performance. It is a business risk. Design, implement, and encourage an innovative culture. Allow your employees to fail. Give them the license to innovate. Innovation cannot occur without failure. Drive awareness throughout the organization. If everyone's aware of complacency and the issues that is causing to your business, to the community, then they were less likely to be complacent. Eliminate the safety blind spots, the things that you don't see, and it can cause issues. Vet your contractors and suppliers. Those folks actually can bring risks to your environment, to your employees, and risk to completing the mission for your client or customer. Another Monday does not have to be another Monday. You can diffuse complacency. Just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean it can't be done now. If your organization is uncomfortable, then it cannot be comfortable. By that I mean you have to make sure that your organization is always uncomfortable, always on the edge of innovation, always on the edge of something new. That way, your organization does not become comfortable and become complacent. Manage complacency like anything else, reputational risk or financial risk. All right, so I think we're at the point where we can ask some questions. And remember, there is some bonus material on leadership following the questions and answers. Do we have any? All right. I see one here. It says, how do you suggest we get senior leadership to buy in that safe driving is something the business owns? Okay, that's a very good question. So I'll turn that one around. How do you suggest that we get senior leadership to buy in that safe driving is something the business owns? So equate safe driving to risk, right? So if you were to go to your leadership and say, we're about to lose $50,000 in revenue by taking this particular action, the likelihood is your leadership is going to say, well, wait a minute, what else can we do to avoid that action from coming to fruition? So in this particular case, you tie the driving, unsafe driving, the safe driving. That's just because you asked the question was safe driving. Tie safe driving to predictability, meaning your employees and your fleet is meeting the mission. It's the logistics, is getting the product or service where it needs to go on time and within the customer specifications and without causing the company undue stress financially. So that's how you get them to buy it, to own it, is tie it back to risk, and that safe driving lowers the risk to the business. It says, can you please explain a little bit more about how common causes can be used by leaders? That was not clear to, okay, sure, common causes. Why do people who don't even know each other, thousands of them, tens of thousands of them, put on pink ribbons and march? They march for what? They march for a cause, to eradicate cancer. But why? Why do they do that? They do that because it is something that they value. It is something that they believe in. It is something that it takes an entire community to achieve. And when you have employee buy-in, that's the key to your success. So leaders can create common causes. For example, let's just say that in your organization, you are in warehousing, and in that particular warehousing, your customer is relying on you to get the product from point A to point B. So you receive it, you store it, and you disposition it from that particular point. A common cause there would be is, what is that mission for your organization? What is it? How is it that can create job security? If that mission is accomplished, how can that relate back to job security? If that mission is accomplished, how can that relate back to community service? If that mission is accomplished, how can it relate back to the ultimate goal? Is it shipping supplies to a hospital? So medical services, what is it doing? So you tie the general causes, common causes from the company into the employee's contribution into that. And by doing so, you get buy-in. And by getting buy-in, you increase the level of efficiency throughout your organization. So that's how common causes can be used by leaders. What are some of the examples of information pit stops that safety teams can implement at a manufacturing company? Okay, so in a manufacturing company, so remember, information plus emotion equals retention, and retention is what you're after. You want people to remember things. So you have to provide information, which means something needs to be done, and where's the emotional piece? So, and from a safety perspective, in the safety teams, what is it that it can cause? What are the results of the manufacturing injuries that you've had? What was the impact to the family? What were the impact to the workers that were there? Not only from a business perspective, but the emotional perspective. So you can create an information pit stop by bringing to life the actual consequences of unsafe actions. And it doesn't have to be at your facility. I would utilize other incidences from other companies that are in manufacturing to do this. And so thereby you have people remember why, the why behind I have to listen. And once you drive the why behind why you have to listen, then that's gonna create an information pit stop. Information plus emotion equals retention. So remember, the emotional piece is the one that you're after. Tie it to whatever the message is that you're delivering, and you're gonna wind up getting retention. Okay, work pride that benefits, let's see. Complacency has been inserted over engaged. Okay, all right. How can you make sure that the right safety practices are being prioritized? Okay, so I'm going to take this from two perspectives. One, prioritize in terms of the touch labor, and one, prioritize in terms of leadership. So how can you make sure that they're done? You can't present information to touch labor the same way that you present information to leadership. Leadership is measured a certain way. They're measured by schedule and budget, financial performance, and commitments. Employees are measured by the productivity that they certainly are performing. So priority has to do with a choice. I set my priorities based on what I believe is more important. So if the person feels that they are more important than the work to be put out, the likelihood is they're going to work safer. They're not going to take that risk. They're not going to climb up 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet without fall protection, right? Because they value their importance more than the job they're going to go complete. That's the employee side. On the business side, look at it from a risk perspective. Why should safety be prioritized? Because if it isn't prioritized, it introduces unpredictability in our business. And being unpredictable is not good. We have to be predictable in order for us to be successful as a business. So how can you tie back the safety initiatives to predictability and output for the business leader so that schedule is met and quality is met and everything else is met? Safety feeds all of that. So that's how I would do it in those two instances. Let's see, can a company's insurer be helpful in turning around a toxic safety culture? Yes. The short answer is yes. You know, if you got to think about how insurers work, right? So So if I'm an insurance company and I'm insuring you from a workers' compensation perspective or liability perspective, and you have a lot of claims, I'm not going to want to insure you anymore. And it's going to get to the point where the high premiums are not worth the risk for me to take as an insurer. So therefore, I'm going to drop the company. So definitely insurers can have an impact on a toxic safety culture by increasing rates, and then by having heart-to-heart discussions with leadership and saying, you are becoming too much of a risk for us as an insurer because your losses are going to exceed. We're not going to make a profit on you. We're going to have a loss. So absolutely, yes, they can. Okay, let's see. In the wake of corporate downsizing, how can I convince senior management that safety training is worth the cost of downtime for training? All right, this one is very interesting because you have to equate safety training not as a cost, but rather as a risk reduction measure. By training people, you are providing them with the tools they need to follow procedure, to be your company to be compliant with the law, and to keep them safe. So in a downsizing company, what happens is less people do more. And when less people do more, the likelihood is higher that people are going to wind up getting injured. So going back to management and leadership and saying, we have less people to do more work and I want to sit them in a classroom to do training, is not going to sit well with the leadership. But if you sell it to them as, the reason we have to go through this process is so that we already have a significant risk and we want to be able to lower that by providing the training, the likelihood is going to be higher that you're going to wind up selling it. Okay, did I capture everyone's questions? So going through them now. Okay. All right, so let's, we're getting close to the end. See if I can advance the slide. All right, so my end goal for this webinar is to offer the opportunity to really think differently about how to be the spark plug that ignites a positive movement within your organization, where complacency is diffused through the implementation of powerful strategies and employees embrace change as a cultural norm through the influence of leadership. I trust that this goal was met. The present is and the future that we talked about earlier in this session is now the past. Gone is the time. Like any variable resource is never to return. All I can wish for is that our time together is worth your investment, your energy, and your passion towards helping this world become a safer place. And as promised, here's a bonus material that I have found in about 35 years of working professionally that I summarize here. So this is how to become highly successful in whatever it is that you choose to do. And it starts with the 4 B's of business. The 4 B's of business are be brief, be prepared, be inspiring, and be gone. Be brief, be prepared, be inspiring, and be gone. Be brief, why? Because time is very, very valuable. Even your employers value time so much that they actually buy it from you. So be very brief in what you do and honor that time. Quick meetings, quick answers, to the point, get it done. Be brief. Be prepared. Understand who you're talking to, so that way you can talk their language and sell your ideas. Be brief, be prepared. Be inspiring. If your hair's not on fire, nobody else is going to be either. So you have to be very excited about the work that you do and about the initiatives that you're bringing forward. And be gone means, hey, that doesn't mean leave. It means go get it done, deliver on your promises, hold yourself accountable for meeting schedules, and everyone else for their commitments to yourself. The one to the left is reputation. Your reputation is everything. Build it, build it, build it, build it, and build it. The ones to the right is create partnerships. No one person can do everything in an organization, not even close. It takes a team to get it done. So be the pollinator within your organization that brings teams together for common causes so that you can create partnerships. And then the one on the bottom is financial. Learn the language of business. If you understand the language of business and the business terms that your company is using, you're better able to sell your ideas, safety and otherwise. And then the plus one is you. That's the one where you take the action. So be brief, be prepared, be inspiring, be gone, have an impeccable reputation, collaborate, build those partnerships, learn the language of finance and business, and the plus one means you go make it happen. All right, and finally, if it happens, there's a good reason for it. All you have to do is find it. So let's connect so that we can share best practices and success story on Twitter or LinkedIn. And in the insightful words of Mark Twain, there are two important days in your life: the day you were born and the day you found out why. Thank you very much for allowing me the honor to sharing my why with you today. Until next time, I'm J.A. Rodriguez Jr. Go ahead, dare to think differently. We'll see you then. Now back to you.
So, wow, Jay, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. I think that was a fascinating presentation. I want to thank everyone that is here with us today. Again, you'll get a copy of this PDF following this session, and we have a brief survey that we'd like to share with you, and we'd like to get your feedback on that. So again, thank you so much for attending, and J.A., thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Awesome.